and Charles, only on LA Talk Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone.
What's happening?
Yeah, another awesome episode of Soul Sexy here today. We are super excited. We have a really cool guest that is coming on. We have Doug Vermeeren actually on the show today.
Yes.
And he's actually on the line right now. I'll just let you say hello if you'd like. Hi, Doug.
Hey, how are you doing?
Very, very good. We are so stoked to have you on. You're so well known. I know this is silly of me, but I got so excited when we heard we were having you on. I'm like, yes, this is going to be amazing. So anyway, first of all, welcome to the show. You are you're just awesome. What's really cool that I like that you've done is you've produced and directed and work with some really awesome power people out there besides yourself being power in that sense. And working with Jack Canfield and Joe Vitale, Bob Proctor, who I actually know. It's so cool. So thank you for coming on. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. We're going to have some fun. Lots of awesome people, that's for sure.
Doug,
Absolutely.
we're happy to have you. Excited to drop in and dive deep with your story, if we can begin there.
Sure.
How you found your personal power and mastery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. The crazy thing is I wasn't raised with any kind of personal development or anything like that. I'd never, even heard of Tony Robbins before when I was a kid. I never knew any of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of my big shift is I guess, to give the full context, my father worked in construction. My mom babysat kids in the home, and our family was really just kind of a group of hardworking people, but no special skills or talent for, entrepreneurship or anything like that. And so my idea that I was taught, this idea of working smarter, was work harder, put in more hours. So we just worked hard. And coincidentally, I was doing the working hard thing and not getting ahead at all. I was not very successful. In fact, I had all kinds of financial challenges, even getting into college and staying in college. And I was literally on, the financial edge of having to go home. And I took a job selling pest control door to door, thinking that door to door sales, they sold it to me. They told me I'd make a ton of money doing this. And so the truth of the matter, yeah, you guessed it. And if you don't know sales, you're rolling your eyes right now.
Yeah. And I'm picturing all the doors that were slamming, literally, oh my gosh, that's got to be hard. That's hard. Wow.
And I was selling pest control too, so nobody wants to hear they've even got bugs, so it's even worse, right? But it was brutal. So anyways, I was honestly just about to pack it in, to go home, to quit, go find something else to do, give up on school, the whole bit. And right at that time, a friend of mine suggested I read the book Think and Grow Rich. And again, I'd never heard of personal development, but with a title like Think and Grow Rich, I mean, you have my attention, right? So
Napoleon Hill.
What that's about.
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill. And so for those of you who are maybe familiar with that book or maybe not, you'll know that Napoleon Hill, to write that book, he went out and he interviewed several of the world's top achievers in his day. People like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, the Rockefellers, the Wrigleys, the Wright brothers. I mean, the list goes on. And so when I read that book and understood that's how he did it, I had, of course, a big mental shift, but I had also a desire now that I wanted to start hanging out with really successful people and learning from them. And so I started on a mission. And, obviously I didn't start with a lot of big names. I didn't know these people, but I started with some of the successful people in my immediate circle. And there was one millionaire that I interviewed and started spending a lot of time with, and he kind of took me under his wing almost like a grandfather. And after, a couple of months with him, he said, you know what? There's one question you haven't asked me that's going to change everything for you. I said, well, what's that? He said, you haven't asked me who else I know that you should talk to. And so I asked that question, and I began to ask that question of everybody ever after. And that's what got me to introductions to everybody from Warren Buffett to Richard Branson to Mark Cuban to Oprah Winfrey to, you name it, the who's who of our generation.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about it is, not only did I have a mind shift meeting these people, many of them, in fact, are still friends and mentors of mine today and people that I now connect with, but I used their advice that they gave me as a 19-year-old, right? A broke 19-year-old that had no prior idea of what to do. And in 6 short months, I did $1.6 million as a 19-year-old. So it works, guys. Get a good mentor and listen to what they say. It works.
This is incredible.
That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah, and it's funny because I just started, my dad always said, you are who you hang around. And I'm like, nah, that's not true.
Yeah.
And it is so true. Like, I'm realizing that now. And was so into the spiritual community for so long and then shifted into the entrepreneur. And it's like, I see how successful I am now, and it's like it's because I'm learning so much more by like-minded people who have similar passions and desires to actually like achieve to help others in the world. So it is true. It is true. It's not just dad saying that.
Yeah. And it's not just people. I find it's all influences. Everything we surround ourselves with. If you want to sit on the couch, eat potato chips, and watch TV, that's an influence in your life, and it's going to dictate who you decide you can become. We rise, how should we say, to the standard of the things we surround ourselves with. And what do we say? If you hang out with 4 losers, you get to become the 5th. Congratulations. So you don't want that, right? Like we want to up-level everything in our life, and we don't want to spend time with things that are going to hold us back or drag us down or make us feel inferior to who we really are. We don't want, and we don't need any of that in our life. There's so many good things that we can fill our lives with.
Totally. So did you have like any kind of meditation practice or anything that kind of like, and I think you're a Brazilian jiu-jitsu like master or some sort, right? So like, I heard about that.
What you know about that?
So has that helped center you through everything that?
100%.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I found, and again, I'm not saying that somebody has to go start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or a martial art to kind of get themselves grounded. But for me, when I go into, training or even to do a competition like a fight or anything, if you have your brain outside the room, like if you're thinking about other things or you're elsewhere, you're going to get hurt. You need to be fully present. And so I think it's really important, this idea of fully present. In fact, something that I read not too long ago that just blew me away. Like, how occasionally Time Magazine puts out those kind of one-shot issues that like talk about the brain or fitness or those kind of things. So I saw one recently on happiness. I thought, I want to pick this up because I want to know what they're saying, scientifically about their study of happiness. And it was so interesting because the thing that they said is that happiness, the biggest enemy of happiness is spending time thinking about the past or worrying about the future. That when we're in the current flow and we're present in the now, we have happiness, and we have the most happiness. And as I began to think about that and compare it to my interviews with the world's top achievers, something very similar was presented to me, and that was the idea of fear. You see, fear can exist if we look at the past and say, oh, I'm doomed to repeat where I've been, and oh, I fear that I've offended somebody or someone hurt me, and those pains from the past appear. But we can also have fear based on the future. Oh, it won't work out. It never works out for me. This won't. But you know what? If we ground ourselves also in the present, fear can't exist in the present. If you're ever in danger and you're taking action, you don't act out of fear. You act out of instinct, and you just flow with it. And I think it's so important that, not all the time, but some of the time, we really just let go of past and future and just exist. Right? Just exist.
Yeah.
And so let's say, someone isn't able to, like, how can you, or what are some tools rather that you could help shift them more into the present?
Well, can I share one thing that was absolutely astounding to me when I did this study? Now, as you know, I went out and I interviewed the world's top achievers. Those were all fascinating interviews and amazing. But my most powerful interview didn't come from a top achiever. You're going to think this is weird. Like, you've got the world's top of the top millionaires, billionaires, and your top interview wasn't there? No. In fact, kind of what happened is I wanted to understand the idea around change. Like, how do we make a shift as a person, an immediate shift? And so I thought, what are all the areas or occupations or people that are really involved in massive change and have to do it quickly? And immediately came to my mind the idea of suicide hotline workers. And so I decided I wanted to interview some of the trainers for suicide hotline workers. Because if you think about it, when someone calls in on a suicide hotline, they're in the worst case of despair, full of anxiety, desperation. In fact, the lady that I interviewed said there's even people that call in and they've literally already got a gun in their hand as they're talking to us on the phone, or they've taken something, medication or pills or something, or they've already, in some cases, they've either injured themselves or they're just about to. And so when I looked at that, I was like, man, that's somebody that needs to make a massive change immediately. Like, if you got somebody on the phone, it's instant, right? And so as I started talking to her about some of the strategies that they use, she said there's one thing that they are not allowed to say. And I was like, well, what's that? Like, what's the one thing? She goes, we can't say don't kill yourself. I was like, what? Like, that's the first thing I would say, right? Like,
wow.
that's the first words out of my mouth. Don't do that. And so I was really curious now. She had my attention. I was like, why wouldn't you say that? And she said, well, because what you're doing when you say that is you're taking away their choice. And that's why they feel cornered in the first place. That's why they feel like there's no hope. They don't feel like there's any more choices to make.
Wow.
So she says, instead of saying don't kill yourself, we say, yeah, that is a choice you could make. You have that power, but here's what the consequence looks like. But here's another choice. You could choose to stick around, and that's what that choice looks like. Or you could choose to get help, and you called me today, so you that's part of your choices, and that's what that looks like. And then she said something very interesting, which I think very, appropriately corresponds to what you and I are talking about now. She said that the moment people begin to see that they have choices, their power returns. And I found that to be so profound. And over the last 10 years, as we've been teaching that in Personal Power Mastery in the live seminars, I've had people come in foreclosure of their home, bankruptcy in the business, going through a divorce or contemplating divorce, or people that are diagnosed with terminal illness, or people that have lost a loved one, or maybe a drunk driver killed their child, or they've lost somebody in military action, or whatever it is. And I've always found that although they come in paralyzed, the moment that they start seeing they have choices, their power returns. And I'm not saying they've got to take all the choices. They just need to become aware that they have choices. And so for me, that was one of the most powerful things that I learned as we were developing this program.
That's absolutely incredible. And it's interesting that you say that, because there's a whole program also called Redirecting Your Children's Behavior. And it's like, and now I see where they got that from, actually. And it was something like when kids, as a child, you feel like you don't have a choice. Like, you have to do this and you have to do that. Yeah. And it's all about like, well, you could do that, or you could choose this, or you could do that and do this.
Yeah.
Either or. And so it's interesting because I do that with children, and I never thought to do it with like reality of myself or any of my peers. And like, why wouldn't we? And that is like, actually, I'm like mind blown right now about how like, duh, like, so.
Well, what's fascinating to me, the thing that even mind blows me is, again, now I've been studying this and teaching this for decades. And of course, we got the interviews of the top achievers. So there's a lot of stuff that I learned that many success books never ever even teach or touch upon or have recognized. But that one surprised me. I'm surprised that no other book thus far that I've read, and I do a lot of reading, I've never seen that mentioned in a personal development book. Give people the power of choice, and you'll see that already they begin to gain power. And it's kind of funny, because when I looked at even what was I going to call my program on my book, I deliberately chose the name Personal Power Mastery, because I first of all believe that idea of personal, here's the deal. If you want to change something, you first have to own it. If you want to change it, you've got to own it. And most people have a really hard time doing that.
Yes.
And then the second step is to realize, like I said, with power, that we have the capacity to take action, to do something different. And that comes with that idea of choice as well. But lastly, this idea of mastery. Mastery is not perfection. It's not. It's persistence.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
In fact, Picasso was once interviewed, Pablo Picasso, and they said, what makes you such a master? Wow, you really do a great job. And he says, well, if you saw what I had to go through to get here, you wouldn't call me a master, you'd call me persistent. And I think too many of us are hard on ourselves. Yes. We wait for perfection. We think if things aren't going perfectly, we're failing. And that's not true. That's almost like saying, I want to get to a certain destination, and you're having to wait until all the lights turn green. Like, who would ever do that? Right. So we'll do one thing in one aspect of our life that's totally commonplace, but when it comes to treating ourselves, I think we're a lot harder on ourselves than we actually need to be or should be. And I think that's kind of unfair, to be quite frank. I think it's unfair.
Doug, how about the other end of the spectrum? So there's power and choice, right? And then, on our road to success, a lot of people get caught up in too many choices, and they end up like deer in a headlight status.
That's me. Or was me.
Definitely that.
Was me.
Yeah, and what's so crazy is it's interesting, because as I have studied choice, I've also found something that will help you recognize immediately if your choices are incorrect. I found that the majority of choices that are based on things like immediate gratification never bring happiness or joy in the long run. But the problem is, most of us make those kind of choices. Like, we go to the mall, we want the new pair of shoes, and then we wonder why we don't have enough, money at the end of the month.
Right.
Well, it's because we're making poor choices. We've even had people who've come into Personal Power Mastery. I have one fellow that, got himself hooked on drugs. Well, again, it was immediate gratification, trying to please the peers that were around him. That's how it started. There's another gentleman that came, and he had cheated on his wife. Well, again, immediate gratification, and all of a sudden that led to all these heartaches. So the problem, I think, with most people is they don't think through their choices. And this brings an interesting question, because you've heard this thing that says happiness is a choice. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not entirely true. Happiness, by definition, and what we say it is in our training, happiness is being satisfied with the choice, but also the consequence that follows. So we've got to recognize choice and consequence are always joined. We need to really understand that they come as a unit. You can't pick one and not get the other. And so even if we say, oh, this is what I want to do, and you hear sometimes people say that I want to live my life on my terms and blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? If you don't live your life also on the terms of the consequences that you really want to have, doesn't matter what you do in the short term, you're always going to be unfulfilled and unhappy.
One of my favorite books is by Michael Singer. It's called Untethered Soul. And in that, in that book, it's really powerful along those lines. It's, you know, the power of choice, and we can choose to be happy and unconditionally. So a lot of people I choose happiness, and then they're not thinking about the consequences that come with that. And then as soon as something happens, my wife leaves me, or you know, my dog dies, then it's conditional happiness. So this really resonated with me, and I decided right then after I read that book, I said, that's it. I'm unconditionally happy, and I'm going to stay dedicated to that. And wow, the universe tested me.
That's powerful.
It was like I got hit with the flu, basically. Like, I hardly ever get sick. I got physically sick. I was like, had some financial difficulties at that time, and it was like all hitting me at once. And I sat there and was like, wow, this is what I asked for. And I said, careful what you ask for. So it allowed me to step back into the seat of consciousness and observe all that.
About this. I love that you're talking about this. The reason why I think this is so important and powerful was really interesting, because as I was studying the world's top achievers, I was also at the same time reading every success book I could get my hands on. And there was one specific principle that all the successful people practiced, but none of the success books talked about. Like, all the success books talk about time management, goal setting, and all these prioritizing and that kind of stuff. But the principle they missed was gratitude. And as you're talking about this idea of happiness and having it being kind of self-sufficient, when I studied gratitude, like, you know, for those of you who don't know, I did the movie The Gratitude Experiment. In fact, I've done 3 of the top 10 personal development movies. And some of the names you mentioned at the beginning, like Bob Proctor's in that movie, John DeMartini's in that movie, John Gray, who did Men Are From Mars, and just a great number of amazing people. And so as we were doing the movie, I got to interview these guys, and Mary Morrissey actually came up with something really cool that I hadn't heard before. And she said there is a difference between gratitude in and gratitude for. And most people express gratitude for, meaning, you know, I'm grateful for my house, my spouse, my cars, my money, blah, 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 blah. But as soon as all that stuff gets taken away, what do you have then? And so as I researched this more, I really looked into this principle of gratitude in, and it really comes down to being, how should we say, proactive and not having outside influences dictate what your outcomes, even your decisions or even your thinking will be. And it's a very Zen-like kind of feeling, very obviously difficult to attain because we're so attached to things in our lives. But the more that we can kind of be self-sufficient even when things go wrong, and the more that we can kind of be proactive to create these circumstances we want rather than respond to the circumstances we are involved in, we become much more gratitude in rather than gratitude for. And that's where the real power comes.
That's
and
really
it was so interesting because also, like, as we saw the recession in 2008, I got a chance to see firsthand the difference between people who were gratitude for, losing everything, and people who were gratitude in, they lost stuff, but they were able to rebuild an awful lot quicker because they were confident in themselves. They were living from a place of, you know, everything internally was, how should we say, congruent, and it didn't break down when the crap hit the fan, so to speak, right?
Right.
That's actually a great way to look at it. Thank you. So what are some ways that can motivate people to, you know, stay in that space, that positive space, and to actually have momentum to get to where they want to be?
Well, you used actually 2 really cool words there, momentum and motivation. Number one, it's easier to get momentum than it is motivation.
Okay.
In fact, when you're moving with something that's working for you, you can keep moving with things that are working for you. When you have to get motivated to things that aren't working for you or you don't yet see the value in it, it's often difficult. But let me share with you something kind of cool that I also discovered. Now, motivation is also very attached to our values. And if you were to look at a seesaw, right? So you've got this board, one end is down, one end is up, and then, you know, it shifts and the other end goes down, the other end comes up. If you think of values on one end and motivation on the other, it makes it really simple to see. When motivation is down, meaning it's low at the bottom, it doesn't require a lot of big motivation to make things happen. That's generally because it's attached to something that you have a high value to. So in other words, the value end of the seesaw is high. That means the motivation end is low. You'll do the things that you value. You'll sacrifice for the things you value. You'll prioritize for the things you value. People ask me, how can I beat procrastination? Well, you find a way for the activities that you need to do to attach to things that you value. Then you require very little motivation and you'll do them.
That's a great
But the other end is opposite and true. If you have a very low value behind something, it takes a lot of motivation to get you to do it. In fact, for those of you who are, you know, in a job where there's quotas or goals that are assigned to you and you don't see the purpose behind it, obviously it takes a lot of carrot or a stick to get you motivated, right? Either they'll threaten you, you're going to lose your job if you don't get this, or if you happen to do it, there's a bonus or a raise. Well, the thing that management needs to understand, and maybe even in a family dynamic, you want to get your kids to do things, or even for yourself, that you really need to start finding a way to attach the activities to people's truest values. When things are attached to a high value, then, you know, we'll do it. And it kind of reminds me of something interesting. Like one of the other movies we did is called The Treasure Map. And it's funny because we're talking about personal power mastery, but one of the things that I'm known for is being the #1 passive income coach in the world. I help people build passive income. And so when we're talking to people about money, everybody's rich. The difference is it appears in the form that you value most.
Clothing.
And so if you value clothing,
shoes,
or going out to dinner or whatever, that's where it appears. You can see it right on your bank statement.
Yep.
And also we could also even say for some things too, if people value watching television and you know, reality TV and all these things, and they leave all their time there rather than going to create something constructive, well, that's again what they value most. So we really got to ask ourselves, you know, if we want to have different outcomes, what is it that we truly value? And then we should answer the question why. Because once we truly see the value and why we value things, well, behavior can change. We can see what behaviors aren't really giving us the things that we value. And then we've got to make a choice, because the truth of the matter is you can't do everything in life. You do have to make sacrifices, despite what everybody says where, yeah, you can have it all. You really can't. Life is like having a room full of plants and you've got one glass of water. If you try to water everything, it will all die.
Yes.
But if you pick 2 or 3 or 4 things that are just really important, you can keep them alive and sustain them. And I think that that's what I noticed that all the successful people did. They learned how to discover what they really wanted out of life, and they just got to it. And I think that's a really valuable lesson.
And I learned this at age almost 40.
Yeah. I think I'm still learning it. You know, I talk about this, but the truth of the matter is we have to admit that we're all still students, like all of us, till the day we die. And if you're not, then that's pretty messy.
Always learning. And when we think we know it all, boy, we get a bitch slap from...
Oh, jeez. Right?
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. You know, it's so funny, actually, while we're on that topic, and this is just speaking about money, one of my mentors as I was a young man, I'll never forget, he was a multi-billionaire with a B, right?
Wow.
And I wanted to start a business, and so I brought a business plan to him, and he took a look at it. And, you know, I was just a young 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid. So I was just looking at my business plan, he goes, you might want to change that. But right away, instead of listening, I started to defend it, right? And I started saying, you know, no, this is why it's like this. And so he kind of shrugged, let me, you know, have my moment of being smart. Then a little bit later on, he pointed out, he goes, you might want to change this too. It's like, no, and I defended it again. And then it happened again. And I defended it again. Finally, he put up his hand and goes, listen, you can be rich or you can be right. You can't be both. And then he began to explain. He says, if you want to hang on to your ego, you get to keep everything that you've already got. You get to stay exactly how you are. And your next 10 years is going to look like your last 10 years. Your whole life is going to be a repetition of the same. But he said, but if you want to learn how to be better and more successful, and again, the words he used was rich, he says, then you need to listen and learn from someone smarter than you. And then he said, our bank statements, you and I, are actually report cards of how well we understand this principle. So you can either hang on to what you understand or you can learn from someone else. And then he said something even funnier to me. He said, what's the difference between stupidity and tenacity? I said, well, I don't know. He goes, well, stupidity, he said, is a guy banging his head on the wall trying to get in the room next door. And he bangs, bang, 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 bang on the same spot. That's stupid. Then he said tenacity is a guy who might bang his head on the wall once, but then he's going to try a new spot to bang and then somewhere else to bang until he either finds a door or a window or someone comes in and tells him what to do. Because the difference between stupidity and tenacity is being teachable and trying a new approach. And the problem, I think, with a lot of people is they're just so comfortable trying the same approach, even though it's killing them, they'd rather do that.
I love that.
No, that's actually, I love that analogy. I'm very visual, so I've pictured it. I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah, don't go bang your head on the wall to try it out. You take my word for it, you'll be okay.
Definitely not. Okay, so I'm on your site right now, and I see the treasure map and the other. You've done so many things. Just question, because we're on the whole money thing right now. So, what are 5 essentials to becoming a money magnet? I am curious. I'm curious. Very curious.
Wow, you just saw that CD on my site.
I did. I did. Yep.
Wow. Well, it takes a little bit more than the time we've got to go through it. But one of the biggest things I think that most people kind of miss when it comes to understanding money right off the bat is if I were to ask, you guys right now, what does financial freedom look like to you? Just go ahead and tell me what financial freedom looks like. You can give me an answer.
I want to be on a yacht, and I can still work because I like helping people. That's a core. I like helping and coaching others and seeing them successful, and shine in their ways. But I want to be on a boat doing it wherever I want. I just want to be floating throughout the world, doing my time on me and when I feel like it.
Okay. So if this was a seminar that I was conducting, I do a seminar on wealth building, my answer to you on that would just simply be wrong. Okay.
Dang it.
Let's go with the second one. I'm just trying to be clear, honest, up front. Let's do this, right? Okay, so let's hear the other answer.
So
what does financial freedom look like to you?
Financial freedom is the ability to do whatever I want, whenever I want.
Yeah, wrong. Okay, so let's do a little teaching. Hey, can I tell you what? This is why most people get it wrong. Financial freedom is actually not an emotional experience, and you've both given me some very, they're nice experiences. I'm not going to discount that part. They're valuable to you, but that's not what financial freedom is. Financial freedom is actually a very specific number. That's what it is.
Oh.
And if we can start looking at it in terms of specifics. So write this down. A goal that is specific and clear becomes attainable and near. So your financial freedom is actually, if you look at the numbers that you need, what is your mortgage every month? What is your utilities? What are your grocery payments? What are your car payments, your insurances, whatever? Let's just say all the numbers that you have to pay, your obligations every single month is $5,000. I'm just pulling that number out. I'm not saying it's accurate, but let's say it's $5,000. Well, that means then you need to come up with $5,000 every month, and then you're financially free. That's what your financial freedom looks like. And the interesting thing is there's 4 stages of financial freedom, what we call financial insecurity, which is where many people are at, meaning that some months they just don't have enough money, so they're having to skip a bill, and next month they'll pay that bill, and they juggle things around. That's where, probably 80% of North Americans are. Then there is a group called financial security, and that's people who basically are what we call paycheck to paycheck. But if there's an emergency, if the brakes go out on your car and you need to fix it, you're back to financial insecurity. Or your kid needs braces, you're back to financial insecurity. Then there's financial freedom, and there's very few people that have a passive income that covers all of their monthly obligations. But it can be done, but it can't be done until you know what those obligations are. But there's one more stage too, and this is the one that everybody actually mistakes for financial freedom, because this is the one you really want, and that's financial abundance.
Ooh.
And I'm not a big fan of, you've heard in the past this idea of, hey, the goal is to balance the checkbook. No way. I don't want to balance nothing. I want to throw it way into abundance. I want to be totally out of whack. I don't want to have any kind of balance in my life, or a balancing act, or a tightrope kind of walk. I want to be totally in abundance. And this is the problem too, is when people write down on their vision board and they put a picture of a Ferrari there and a picture of a nice house and trips and vacations, and well, why don't you write below that what it costs for each of those things and which are the specific car models that you want. And that way, if a car shows up in your life, like one of the Ferraris that I bought, this was a great example, because a couple of years ago I bought a 360 Medina Spider, and I put it on my vision board, and I wrote exactly the cost of the car, exactly the make and the model. So here's what happened. All of a sudden, I was searching online one day, and I saw that exact car, and I saw it priced quite a bit lower than what those cars go for. Well, now I also recognize I'm sitting on a golden opportunity. So if you don't know what the specifics are, you don't even know if it's a good opportunity when it comes along. In fact, it's funny. I have a lot of times people ask me, they say, where can I find a good investment opportunity? Do you know what I say? I say that's two questions. Because one, where is the geography? But more important is a good investment opportunity means something different to me than it does to you. So until you have some specific ideas around what these things really mean, it's really hard to participate. Right? You've got to know the rules of the game before you can participate. Right?
I love this. This is actually, and it's funny you say that because, yeah, I mean, I did manifest a new car recently, and
nice.
Yeah,
nice.
And it's like, but it's funny because the things that you talk about, I've done it in the past, but I don't consistently do it, and I was doing it subconsciously, like not even realizing. And I do recognize that, you know, for me, I have to make a certain amount per month to feel like, yes, this feels good to me. And I have that number in my head, and I have to, like, I say it over and over and over again. And it's funny, the more that I think it, the more that it actually starts to appear and happen. And the more that I focus on that. But the more that I don't, or if I just like stop caring or whatever, the focus goes away, then that number tends to go away that month. And I'm like, well, that's, dang it, I got to get back to it and have to bring the focus back to that again.
So let me give you another little secret.
Okay.
You know, you've heard it said that the world is kind of engineered to keep some of us in the rat race. And one of the ways it does that is it puts us into 30-day cycle. Now, what I mean by that is, you know, they say your mortgage is due every 30 days, or it could be biweekly, you know, on a biweekly accelerated. You get your bills through the mail every 30 days, credit cards, and, you know, your utilities, and all these 30-day cycles. Well, most people know what their financial freedom number looks like on a 30-day cycle, but did you know if you want to make $1 million, you need to start thinking of it differently? And that's $2,739 a day, $114 an hour, or $1.10 per minute. And when you start thinking of your day in terms of kind of where I need to be, you can break it into, what do they say, how to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? But when you can start seeing it in these smaller increments that are much more manageable, you can start seeing if you're on track or if you're off track a lot quicker and make corrections. And so I think that's one problem, is that people are looking at life from a very macro perspective, hoping that life is going to get better, where the truth of the matter is, I'm not saying you got to micromanage, but you got to be micro aware so that you can make adjustments until things become habitual.
That's actually,
right?
I
You've
love
got to
that.
start with a very keen awareness, right? Awareness is the first step.
And how about the persistent scarcity mindset in regard to how that affects the nervous system and operating from that place as opposed to inspired action, you know, from a calm state of clarity?
Yeah, well, you know, the other thing too, while we're even just talking on that, if we want to talk from a law of attraction point of view, a person cannot have one foot in scarcity and one foot in abundance and expect to attract abundance. You have to be all in. You have to be fully committed to one side or the other. And that includes the other manifestations of scarcity. Like, most people think scarcity just means lack, but another form of scarcity is criticism and jealousy, right? And so if we have someone in our life that is actually doing well and experiencing success and experiencing wealth, and we become jealous or critical in any kind of capacity, we're actually blocking any kind of abundance to come our way anyway, right? So we've got to understand that, what do we say? The universe is an echo chamber, and how you show up will dictate what shows up for you. If you show up with hesitation, if you show up with fear, doubt, or, you know, challenge or any of that, that's exactly what's going to show up for you. But if you show up with boldness, taking action, and being fully, how should we say, believing that you're worthy and you're worth it and that good things will happen, you'll find that things are attracted to that energy. In fact, in Personal Power Mastery, one of the ways that we kind of teach this is we've got something called the willingness continuum. Now, there's certain tasks in life everybody has to do, but sometimes on the low end of the continuum, we drag our heels, we'll do it, but we're not really that excited to do it. You know, maybe you've had an activity like that. Well, at that low end of the continuum, not only is the energy or vibration low, but all the rewards are low too. So we never pay people a lot of money who drag their heels, who complain and don't want to be there. We just don't. It's human nature, right? But on the other end of the that continuum, we've got people that they'll give their best efforts. When you're giving them a task, it'll get done right, and it'll be quality. And we give people at that end a lot more money. But there are people who are even beyond that. You've heard of going the extra mile, obviously. So even when they've done a quality job, they keep going. They do more than they're asked. And those are the people that eventually get promoted or are leaders in anything that they do, because they solve problems they didn't even create. They There's solutions wherever they go. But I want to suggest there's even one level higher than that, and that's even people who can anticipate problems or needs before they even appear. Now, here's a cool experiment for your listeners. Now, some of you may be married. I'm married. I got a super incredible, outstanding wife.
Not married.
The one thing that I found, if I want to have more rewards in my life, I don't wait to be asked to do something. In fact, the more that I anticipate her needs or our family needs, and I do it, like, for example, you husbands who are listening today, go home literally and fold the laundry without being asked, and clean maybe the floor or something without being asked, and you just watch what happens. Again, at that far end, that's where all the rewards are. You get paid more, you get more rewards, everything happens there. And the problem, I think, with too many people is they wait for permission to be great. Don't do that. You start right away. Make a decision to be a hero before there's an emergency or danger. Most people wait for danger to be a hero. You don't have to do that.
This is true. It's like herding the sheep. Are you the like the leader, or are you like the sheep that's just doing like everyone else? So absolutely.
Yeah, or are you the guy standing off to the side watching someone else herd the sheep?
Sitting in jealousy.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. When you're watching a sporting event, who's making the most money? The players on the field or the spectators watching?
Oh,
right?
interesting.
And most people live their life as a spectator, right?
Yeah. You're right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh, this is
I actually understood that, and I'm not criticizing people that do this, but I always think it's a good laugh that, people show up at let's say a hockey game or a football game, and they're wearing the jersey of the team, but they're sitting in the audience, and as they leave, they say, "We won." No, you didn't. We nothing. You were sitting in the audience. You know what I mean? Like, it's nice that this is your hometown, but you didn't. We nothing.
I'm
right?
guilty.
Unless you're on the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, I mean, it's maybe a harsh analogy, but it kind of is the truth.
Yep.
Is that until we get on the field and make changes, we're just spectators, and we'll never claim the full rewards of our existence as spectators.
That's actually a really amazing analogy. And you're right. I'm guilty of that, but you are right. Why do we do that?
I still cheer for my team, too, but I don't go out thinking I scored any goals that night, right?
It's so much easier at a point where people mess up when you're in the stadium and as a spectator in live.
And that's the other truth of it.
Yes.
How unfair is that? And then people are yelling at referees and yelling at players. And, well, the truth of the matter is if you could do better, get down there. Because there's a reason you weren't offered the position tonight of the goalie. You weren't offered that for a reason.
Exactly.
Right? That guy on the ice put in a lot of work that you didn't see.
Wow. So, okay, what events do you have coming up, and like, how can people find you? Because this is, I would love to come to one of your events. This is like, you're so inspiring.
We have a blast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually just got home yesterday from London, England. We did a big event there, but my next event, funny enough, is back in London, England. So I'm back there on January 11th, 12th, and 13th in London. We're doing my passive income training called Never Work Again. We've got a few others that we're doing in Canada and the U.S. Throughout the year. So you can find kind of information on our website. But one of the things I kind of like is we give a lot of free stuff away. So if you want to just kind of see, what else we've got to teach. And, here's the deal. If you get my vibe, you'll become my tribe. I'm not out to, convince people of anything. If you like me, come. There's lots to learn here. I can teach what the 400 top achievers did. I can show you how to make a bucket load of money. But again, if you resonate with us, we'll be a good fit. If we don't resonate, no problem, right? Like, there's lots of great teachers out there. So here's where you can find some cool tools. I'm going to suggest head over to the website personalpowermastery.co, and that will link you to all of social media, YouTube. We do a weekly podcast called Your First Million's on the Way. You can link that there, where we teach you how to make your first million. We always say, what's easier to make, your first or your second million? Well, your second. So why not get somebody who's done their first to help you build your first? Makes sense, right? So that's what we teach you how to do in that. And obviously we've got a podcast also for Personal Power Mastery as well. But all of it can be linked through that website, personalpowermastery.co. And there's tons of free resources. Come on by and collect them. We know you'll love the information that we've got.
Yeah, and I'm playing around on here now. Like, you've got a podcast with all kinds of like wonderful things on here, and not to mention the store. And and it's funny because it's like, I like what you just said about come learn from, like, why not ask a millionaire how to make your first? And it's like, like, my dad is someone who I look up to, and he's very business successful. And I don't listen to him because he's like my dad. So, you know what I mean? It's like, so I don't, that's so silly. Like I should.
You had a gold mine
you know?
at home this whole time.
I know. But I don't think I've realized, because some of the things you're saying, like some of the sayings rather, he would say to me, but like they go over my head and I roll my eyes like, whatever, he just knows it all, you know? And I'm starting to realize like, oh, maybe he was right. And I just didn't want to listen because he's dad, you know? But so this is really cool.
Well, it's that rich or right thing. It's that rich or right thing I was talking about, right? Like, you got to make a choice. Are we going to be rich or are we going to be right? And that's every area of our life, right? We can learn from somebody, right? Gotta look for ways to do that.
What would you say to, I guess those people, and I'm saying this because I'm one of them, who come into a lot of like I have no problem making the money. Like I come into the money, but I have a problem like, where does it go? Where did it go? I have no idea what just happened. And then I'm like crying and rock bottom, and then I build it back up and I make a ton again. And then it's like, it's that roller coaster. How do you get out of the chaos? Yeah.
Well, I think the first thing is, again, an awareness of where it's spent. In fact, if I had a flip chart and I could show you this is the coolest way to do it. It's something called QCC. There's 3 areas that everybody spends their money in. And when you start recognizing how you do this, you'll recognize where your money's going. So the 3 areas, the first Q stands for quality of life. Now, that's, where most people spend the majority of their money. I'm not saying don't spend some stuff on you, because the truth is I believe every purchase is an investment. Because, think about it. Like, use this as an example. If you got a special suit that you love to wear that always makes you feel more powerful at meetings, and if you've got a special event to go to, that's the outfit you put on. We all do, right? Like, we've all got things that make us feel better. And so that quality of life can't be neglected, but often people spend far too much there. And we also buy a lot of things that really give us zero return in value. You got to remember, you're never going to save your way to wealth. You're going to buy your way to wealth by owning assets that will pay you. For example, you can never collect rent on a property you don't own. You can never collect a dividend on an investment that you don't own, and so forth, right? So the second category is called to create. And this is where all the money is made. It will include things like buying education, because what you learn will affect what you earn. It can include buying business growth, real estate investment, or intellectual property development. Okay. Now, again, those pillars, and there's one more I'll talk about in a minute. Business, anything to do with building a business, growing a business, buying a business, that could generate money. In fact, 84% of all self-made millionaires come through a business channel, meaning that they've owned a business. Real estate, again, it can be everything from rental properties, flipping, commercial real estate income trust, the list goes on. Investing in companies, whether it's through stock market, or whether it's, even investing in someone else's business, an angel or venture investor, or intellectual property, developing and exploiting your own intellectual property. And then the last one, which I think most people underestimate, is the power of your network. Most people who go over $1 million, and certainly those that go over $1 billion, never do it with their own money. And so you've got to find, how can you then establish networks where you've got people that support you. And you've heard that your network equals your net worth. It's trite, but it's true. But here's the thing that I also like about your network is you are paid always in your life in proportion to the problems you're able to solve. The thing most people don't talk about when they talk about network is that idea of net refers to 2 nets. One, the fishing net, you're right, the products, the money, everything you're going to bring in. But more importantly, it's the safety net. Now, when you have a bigger network, you can solve bigger and harder problems, and you have better solutions. Like, I've had so many times in my life where, the top 400 achievers that I interviewed, I kept in touch with many of them. And as I've encountered either business or, transactional problems or real estate problems or things I did not know the answer to, I could go to that safety net and I could get solutions. And it's made me a lot of money. In fact, every Friday, I have a friend that I meet with. He's worth about $800 million. His name is Brian. And he is just a genius in business and in, in real estate. And so it's very powerful to learn from him. And so I think our network is one of the most, we talk about it, but most people don't really understand what it fully means to utilize that network to build success in your life.
Doug, I have a question.
And that's important.
Oh, God, he has a question. I have a question on that too.
First.
But okay, thank you. So that's interesting because I have a huge network in entertainment and some multi-millionaires, even billionaires, celebrity world. And I have always felt like I don't want to ask. And because I felt like guilty for asking. And even if it's a great project I believe in, it's like, how do you approach that? Or how do you get over it? And how would you approach them in the first place so that you're not crossing that friendship line or that trust line? That's what I deal with.
And that's a great question because we hear that all the time. And I'll be honest with you, now that, for the last, 20 years, I've had quite a bit of money behind me. And we can always smell when somebody is a taker, right? When somebody comes around and they're just there for themselves and their own purposes. So I think the first thing to really say with that is, if you're just there as a taker and your energy is such, you're not going to succeed in that kind of environment anyway. And so you've got to understand, if you're coming to an environment and you're looking for help, number one, you've got to be authentic and you've got to be sincere, but you've also got to recognize that if you're going to ask for help, be willing to provide help or be willing to give as much as you take. And I'm not saying that, like my friend Brian, who's worth, $800 million, sometimes I feel like, is there anything I can really give this guy? But it's not always about money, right? And this is just it. Too often we paint in broad strokes and we think that all that he would need in his life is money. And the truth of the matter is, one of the things that I find that really works in our relationship is he's a very grandfatherly like. His value that he gets from me is the fact that when he gives me advice, I act on it, right? He's creating a legacy of someone that is becoming a success using the tools that he gives. And I think that that's something that he finds valuable. Now, do I feel like I need to ask him for money? In fact, I'd much rather ask him how to raise the money or to find other alternatives. Because now I don't want to hand out. I actually want the information so that I can pass on to others, or I can do it again and again and again. See, making money is pretty easy. It's like making cupcakes. Once you have the recipe, you can make as many as you want, right?
Yeah.
But if someone hands it to you, it's like that idea. Let me share with you. One of the things I love to do is poke holes in these ancient wisdoms. So you heard this: give a man a fish, he eats for a day; teach a man to fish, and he fishes for life. I say that's kind of bullcrap too, because when you teach a man to fish, he's still a guy in a classroom. So there needs to be a third stage, and that's you take him to the lake, you put a fishing rod in his hand, and you fish with him. When he's had that experience, now he can duplicate that and even teach others.
Yeah.
The action.
Right? Yep. It's no longer theory anymore, right? So when I'm working with the top achievers and I'm looking for their help, I show that I'm aggressive and active to learn. I'm serious about being here. And sometimes I will put my money where my mouth is. I will actually pay to spend time with someone who I believe is highly valuable. And just the fact that they know that I'm a go-getter and I'm serious, often we became friends. In fact, you want to know one of the reasons why many of the top achievers actually became buddies with me is because I said to them, yeah, I'm doing this with as many top achievers as I can find. And many of them were curious and said, well, when you find answers, I'd like to know what you discover. Come back and talk with me on that too. Wow. And so we developed a friendship. In fact, one of my really good friends is Brian Smith, who is the founder of UGG Boots. And we chat all the time and we compare notes. And even though he's created that, big, massive, multicultural brand that's around the world for UGG Boots, he and I still chat. We compare business notes. And I know that I've been helpful to him with things. And we do business deals together, not him funding me or whatever, but together we create. I think they find that valuable. And I think on that note, people need to be careful that they don't underestimate the value that they could bring to the table. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's even a fresh set of eyes or a new perspective or a certain set of gifts or talent. We've got to recognize that, everyone has something to offer if they are prepared to play at those high levels.
That's perfect. That answers my question.
Oh.
I was curious about, business is all about relationships. So I was curious about how you've cultivated those relationships with the high-level figures in your life. And you pretty much answered that.
And here's the thing with it is I'm still also looking for those relationships, actually. When people mention to me that they know certain people or have certain connections or things of that nature, I love introductions. And obviously, like in fact, in London at this event, I went through my phone with a friend of mine and I found introductions for her to help her and what she's doing. So the world is so small. It used to be that they said that there was 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah,
I'm here to tell you that today, especially with the advent of social media, it's not the case anymore.
Right.
In fact, it's so funny. When we were shooting the movie The Opus, to get to even guys like Jack Canfield and all these others, it was generally about 1 degree of separation.
Mm-hmm.
And now I find even with, some of the big names I want to meet, like I wanted to interview President Trump long before he was president. Well, it took 2 phone calls before I found somebody who knew him personally to make that introduction. To get to Oprah Winfrey, I think it took maybe 4 phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it just depends on, who you want to get to, but it's definitely not 6 anymore.
Yeah, it's really
that's old. That's old.
That's funny. That's like the joke in town. Like, if you want to get to someone, just call Bridgetta. Call me. It's like,
there you go.
Yeah,
well, you and
the
I'll
connector.
have to have a chat offline to see who you know, and we'll see who we can connect each other with, because I'm still always looking for those connections. I'm still it's funny because people say, oh, Doug, you're so smart and you teach. And I'm like, the only reason I can do that is because I'm still a student, right? If you know it, you can flow it.
Yeah.
And so I'm always learning. And if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I still even to this day read between 10 and 15 books per month.
Good for you.
Per month.
Wow.
Like, I'm an avid reader.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm interviewing all the top achievers I can find. So I'm still on the hunt. I'm aggressively looking to learn. We go around this world once, man.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to leave any stone unturned. I want to have the maximum experience. And part of my way to do that, which is very simple, is I don't have the time to make all the mistakes. We've heard this before. I don't have time to kind of figure everything out. So I want to learn always from the best of the best, people that can shortcut my success and help me get there in as quick as time as possible. We just don't have the time to spare. We can always make money, but we can never, ever make more time. So it's important that we understand, anytime there's a shortcut, it's important that we take it.
I love it. Thank you. God, this has been such an incredible interview. I really appreciate this. And I would absolutely love to connect with you offline. And because you never know, I have some ideas too. So I would love to learn more and come to one of your seminars. And for any of those out there listening, I'm sure you all want to know more as well. Again, go to personalpowerandmastery.co to learn more. Find Doug, and there's his shop on there. There's where he's at. There's the podcast. There's all kinds of things. Lots of things to offer on your website as well. Thank you so much for taking your time to come on to our show as well. We really, really appreciate this, and I know all of our viewers do too.
Anytime. You guys are awesome. It's fun.
Thank you so much.
Such a treat having you on, Doug.
Yes.
We appreciate all your knowledge, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah, we're out of time, or I would keep going. But
we'll do it again one of these days.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I appreciate you, and we're going to post the website up, or I think your website's already on our website, but we will post it again. And and for anyone listening, this replay will be available online about within the hour. And you may go to latalkradio.com on the video channel and download it, or if you're on the app, or you can go to soulsexypodcast.com. You guys can also follow me at Real Bridgetta on Instagram. Charles?
On Instagram, it is Vacation Vibration, or check out greatestyou.com. That's greatest, capital U.com.
We are on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Again, Doug, thank you so much for being on the show today, and you can find him again at personalpowermastery.co. For everyone out there, this is Soul Sexy signing off, and everyone, be living in your truth. Stay sexy.
Yes. Until next time, we love you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Take care.
You're listening to Soul Sexy with Bridgetta and Charles, only on LA Talk Radio.